Minister, on the government's position that communities can't have a veto when it comes to asylum centres and so on, what would you say to members of some of these communities who say that that kind of makes a mockery of the engagement process, because the government will hear out your concerns and so on and so forth, but the end result is not going to change from the outset? There are some people who would probably say that that's not real engagement, or that there's no productive outcome that can come of such dialogues. What would you say to that?
I'd say, first of all, that the purpose of this engagement is twofold. It's to ensure that people have accurate information about what's proposed for a particular location, and secondly, to ascertain what are the challenges, what are the concerns in that particular community, and make sure we can meaningfully respond to them. And I think on both headings, our community engagement team does a good job. We provide very clear information, initially to public representatives, but often now to community reps. Over the last week, I think about 4 public meetings have been held by our community engagement team, or speaking directly to local communities. But in particular, if there's a sense that there's pressure on GPs in an area, if there's a sense that there's pressure on schools in an area, if there isn't adequate public transport, our community engagement team is able to take that information away, engage with the HSC, engage with the rails teams in the Department of Education, engage with the NTA and the Department of Transport, and we are able to bring changes. We're able to add extra bus services in certain locations. We're able to provide those additional language support teams in schools. So I think there is very tangible steps taken in different areas on foot of these engagements. So I wouldn't agree with what you put forward there in terms of that there isn't a tangible difference. I think there has been.
But wouldn't it be the case as well that in pretty much all over the country there are problems of the sorts you described, where there are GP issues and healthcare issues and accommodation issues and all sorts of things? That's kind of a trend that you'd see in many communities across the country. So it's not really possible to address all of those concerns, is it?
I think, you're right in terms of there isn't a community in Ireland that couldn't identify some challenge that it has right now. And I suppose I would argue sometimes these challenges are maybe incorrectly linked to the future arrival of international protection applicants. But what we are saying is that where this concern is raised, we now have a mechanism to make meaningful changes to the provision of services in that particular area. So we are seen to do our very best, not just verbally, but actually make an improvement in services in that particular area to meet some of those.
Well, sorry, very lastly, just one more really quickly. What would you say to a community who had gone through the engagement process and they'd received all the accurate information and they'd heard out the government side of the story and they'd done all of it, and at the end they still said, we don't want this? What would your message be to such a community?
Well, I would say there are communities all over the country where we have opened international protection or indeed Ukrainian accommodation, and after the initial arrival of people, everything settles down, because all the worst fears that are often put out, misinformation, disinformation provided online, these worst fears are never realised.